Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. I hope you're all doing okay and having a good afternoon, a good evening, or a good morning, wherever you are in the world. Next slide, please. So we're very happy to have you all here today and hope you're all keeping well. This is the third episode of Talking About My Federation. So we had two previous episodes. They're all on our YouTube channel if you want to see them later. And on this episode, we'll be exploring bilateral connections. My colleague Sam Neate, implementation specialist, and Lionel Matthews, account executive, will be presenting today. And we'll also have Kieran Prince, our business development manager, on the Q&A panel later on. I'm your host, Cintia Trigonopoulos. I'm product marketing executive. And I just wanted to run through some housekeeping rules before we start. So next slide, please. We are recording, and the recording will be made available shortly after the webinar on our YouTube channel. So everyone who's registered, you get a link shortly after the webinar. Probably going to be next week, early next week. And feel free to watch it again if there's anything that you missed, or feel free also to share to anyone who you think might benefit. If you have any questions for our speakers, you can please post them to the Q&A panel at the bottom of the screen. And also, if you just want to interact with anyone who's attending, you can just post general queries and comments in the chat panel as well in the bottom of the screen. We are having automated live transcripts, so you can disable them on the CC button at the bottom. So I will pass the floor to my colleague, Sam.
Thanks, Cintia. So welcome, everyone. So what we'll be talking about is just a sort of an intro to bilateral connections, or also one-to-one connections, or direct SAML connections, depends how you refer to them. They've got a couple of different names. And then we'll go over where it might be useful, where it might not be, and some of the issues that you might face when setting up or maintaining a one-to-one connection, as well as sort of those requirements on a federation basis as well. So very quickly, where would you use a one-to-one connection? So direct SAML connection is a very flexible way of creating interoperability between Shibboleth-enabled systems. So if you already operate an IDP version of Shibboleth, which OpenAthens is an IDP software, as well as a Shibboleth SP software, so as well as Shibboleth SP, there's also OpenAthens SP and Keystone. You can use these to use a direct connection to another system instead of going through a federation. So that's a more flexible approach if you've got customers who traditionally aren't in a federation environment, or whether you've got systems that you maintain yourself, where you've got Shibboleth enabled as well. So you can connect to federations and one-to-one connections using either of these methods. And mix those where you might be best used. And that only requires the configuration of the two systems that you're integrating as well. So that doesn't require any other operation outside of what you might be controlling or where you're connecting to. So just a quick diagram to sort of clarify sort of what that looks like. The identity provider software is sat in front of often the user directory that you want to connect to a service provider or a resource. And the way that connection is set up is you exchange a metadata file, which enables the SAML connection. And that just includes the information that either provider needs to then connect to the other. So like an endpoint and sort of attributes that you might be passing. And that trust link then is your connection between those two services. And that can be used in conjunction with a federation as well. So this is an example of a customer who maintains their own Shibboleth-enabled databases on site for the purposes of student services, where you might want to pass attributes that include the student's name, email address, course, something like that. And also a printing service if you want to check that they've got credits on the account, or like a database repository for music and video that you might maintain as well. So then using that in conjunction with the Federation, you've got a mixture of online resources and also some personally maintained ones, meaning that you've got the flexibility of going outside or inside your premises to access resources, and all of that's fed from a single user directory. So all those users can then log into any of those services seamlessly. So where this does become a problem is sort of the scalability from it. So usually setting up the one-to-one connection has a little bit more involvement than if you were registering in a Federation customer. So when we're creating a one-to-one connection, and I personally mostly work with librarians, we would then need to potentially pull in IT resource to look at handling a little bit more of the technical nature of those setups. And it could potentially consume a bit more time when you're going through the setup process. And also in maintenance, if there's any change to the metadata on the service provider or the identity provider side, that could cause issues. So things like certificates or any other changes like that could break that connection while it's in life and working. So looking at the service provider map, if you're then connecting to multiple identity providers, that quickly becomes a larger web of connections that you'll have to maintain, where you've got each individual IDP and each individual connection to each of those IDPs. So if we were to take an example of one publisher having around 400 customers, if you were then to maintain those through one-to-one connections, we've taken an example of around a 2-day ticket life, which means that if you were to maintain all of those 400 connections just as one-to-one connections, you would potentially have 20 to 30 tickets per day for up to 4 weeks if you were to move or maintain or to onboard them all onto one-to-one connections instead of using a Federation approach. And then the view of a Federation, as opposed to the kind of the spider's web of using one-to-one connections, is that at each end, each identity provider and service provider only maintains their connection to the OpenAthens Federation or another federation. So that you've just got the one connection to maintain, and then the Federation metadata hosts all the information about each IDP and also the service provider. So as long as your connection to the Federation is sound, then you'll have that connection live and it will operate without an issue. And registering into the Federation as an IDP just requires an entity ID, which is just a single bit of information as opposed to exchanging a metadata file. And then, yeah, just to sum up those points around sort of setup and in life. So in a Federation, you just need the entity ID and then any attributes that you may want to release to the provider. Whereas on a one-to-one side, you need to do the metadata exchange, which potentially requires some technical services if people aren't quite experienced with that environment. And then in life of these services, the Federation metadata is refreshed every 6 hours, so any changes is caught and then also published, which means that each IDP and SP is updated regularly. And we also have in-house support who can provide advice and resolve issues on behalf of those entities. And then with the one-to-one connections in life, the certificates on either side will need to be individually managed. And then any metadata changes will need to be manually refreshed and updated, as opposed to that being automatically handled by the Federation. And then the onboarding, if you're onboarding a one-to-one service, that would traditionally be more on yourself if you're maintaining the equipment to then onboard that connection and make sure that it's live and tested when you're bringing that on. So that's all that I had around the Federation one-to-one connections at the moment. So we'll hand over to Lionel for the next bit. Lionel, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Thanks a lot for that, Sam. Can we move on to the next slide? Thanks. Yes, so I'm Lionel. As mentioned before, I'm an account executive at OpenAthens. I've been here for a year and a half, and I'm enjoying my time here. So I'll be speaking about why it's best to join the OpenAthens Federation. So some of the reasons of joining the OpenAthens Federation are listed on there. It's a shared trust network, centrally managed with full technical support, access to 2,600 library organizations. Around 40% of these are not eligible to join other national identity federations. So to touch on these points a bit more, firstly, if we look at the centrally managed, centrally managed with full technical support. So OpenAthens technical support pretty much operates between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. to take into account the international clients that we have. Because as you can see over there, we have 2,600 libraries from all over the world. So another thing which I wanted to look at is, instead of looking at why join an OpenAthens Federation, we need to look at what would happen without an OpenAthens, without our OpenAthens Federation. So some of the stuff that Sam mentioned early on is without our federation in the middle, you most likely have to connect, have to create a connection between your identity provider, which is your institution as a library, and a content provider, which is your service provider, right? So you need to individually create a connection, which is your bilateral or one-to-one connection. So this has to happen vice versa as well. So a library has to create a connection with you as a service provider, and you as a service provider have to create a connection with the library. So when you look at this, there's pretty much no support system. You have to, as a library and as a content provider, you have to manage this whole connection yourself. And this becomes shaky and unsuitable, especially if you have to manage a lot of different connections. If you're just dealing with a small number of connections, it's easier to maintain. But if you have dozens of connections, this is where it creates a lot of overhead, and it also creates a lot of work, right? So when it comes to these bilateral connections, there will be a lot of technology issues which will arise, right? Because if there's any changes, as Sam mentioned before, if there's any changes in your certificate or any changes in metadata, then there will be a disruption in connection. And I've had a few clients who've mentioned to me that they've had nightmare situations where they've had to go out and hire a developer outside to actually help them to maintain connections between publishers and make sure that these connections continue to happen. So working with OpenAthens, we look after all of that for you within our OpenAthens, what do you call this, federation. And next slide, please, Sam. Perfect. So now OpenAthens Federation library markets globally. Other national federations only support education and research organizations within their own country. So OpenAthens, we have a truly international federation. Right, we are pushing out federated access across all four corners of the globe. As we speak, we are speaking to someone who would be potentially joining to look after the South America region. At present, we have a representative that's looking after Asia Pacific region. We have representatives, including myself, that's looking after Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So we are truly pushing out federated access across all four corners of the globe. We have clients in all different areas. So as you can see, it's a very diverse client base, from education and research. And we have medical department clients. We have clients within the government, aerospace, defense area. We have corporate clients. We have STEM clients as well. And we have the charity and cultural sector clients as well. Next slide, please, Sam. Okay, so federated access, keeping it simple. If your platform supports SAML, you've done most of the work to participate within our federation. And once set up, library customer onboarding is complete with little to no technical expertise. Next slide, please, Sam. Perfect. So benefits of a managed service. See, our federation is designed to provide uniformity, scalability, and discovery of additional services. We provide expert technical advice and support. Now, I wanted to mention a few things within this area. So OpenAthens, we pretty much have 50 highly trained IT professionals looking after the OpenAthens Federation, and 30 of them tend to be developers. So this is what takes care of any issues that may arise, maybe changes of certificates or anything else, which is tech support related, which will you will have a lot of technical support issues with this kind of technology. So we are there to actually support you and make sure that all your concerns are resolved. Okay. And another thing which I wanted to mention is that when we're dealing with federations, from what I've heard, a lot of other federations are pretty much they are built to satisfy the library department within an institution, within a university. Whereas, yeah, with OpenAthens, as mentioned before, we are pushing out federated access across all 4 corners of the globe. So some of the benefits of this are scalability, right? Because with this, as a content provider, you could actually provide single sign-on services to corporations, to corporate clients, which you're probably having conversations with as far as China or even Thailand. Because of the way we operate at OpenAthens, we can actually extend this benefit to you, for you to actually push out this single sign-on service to those kind of clients. Okay, yep, next slide, please, Sam. Yep. So another thing which I wanted to mention is I know that we are pretty much not pushing out one-to-one connections, right? We're talking about our federation and we're talking about the benefits of it. But it's important to note that with Keystone, one-to-one connections can be useful for publishers, right? Because federations tend to be for universities, but when it comes to corporate clients who aren't in federations, right? If there are clients who aren't in federations, it's worth knowing for yourselves that as long as there's Microsoft, Google, Ping, or anything that's SAML based like Okta, you can create one-to-one connections with these corporate clients. And the way you do it is within. I've just provided a screenshot to show how you're able to do this. Now, if you have any questions regarding this, we'll be happy to answer them for you towards the end of this presentation. Okay, next slide, please, Sam. Now, how are we funded? It's important to know that with OpenAthens, you see, we don't have any public funding. There's no government funding at all. So what this means is that there's no safety net, and we have to be very efficient in the way we operate. Another important thing to notice, which is a huge benefit from what I've noticed, is that we are a not-for-profit entity. So what this means is that we get all of our funding from our clients. So if you have if all of our clients who are paying for their annual subscriptions, all of that funding goes into ensuring that the OpenAthens service is actually exceptional and continues to do a really good job from the end user's perspective. So some of the benefits of us being a not-for-profit entity is that we are creating new products every single time. Mthombeni is one that's which is a recent product, which is becoming a winner for the majority of our institutions that we work with. Okay, and another thing as well, the technical support team that we have that is operating throughout all hours of the day is part of the benefits of actually ensuring that of the fact that we are not for profit entity, because a lot of our funds are going into improving our services. Okay, so next slide, please, Sam. Perfect. So when you work with OpenAthens, what do you get in return? So obviously this is the question you want to ask yourself, what's in it for me, right? So first you get a dedicated account manager like myself, right? And then you get excellent customer service. So as we've mentioned, we've touched on some of these points. Fully supported 24/7 service, highly trained service desk team. We have an exceptional satisfaction rating, as you can see, 4.6 out of 5 in 2020, 2021. Service delivery, our service delivery is secure, scalable, reliable service with 99.98% service uptime in 2020 to 2021. It's also a cloud-based architecture, which makes our service more resilient. to climate change and COVID-19. And there's also product development. So there's continual product development using agile methods. There's it's code developed with customers and library patrons. So we don't just create the product and then put it out to market ourselves. We continuously ask clients that we work with to give us some feedback. And if there's anything that we see to be serious based on the feedback, we then implement it and continue to work on the product. We also have automated product upgrades. There's Wayfinder, free organizational discovery service, and there's also outreach as well for library customers, customer outreach and onboarding. So, yep, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to us. And now we will be answering some of your questions. Next slide, please, Sam.
Thank you very much, Lionel and Sam. If you have any questions, now's the time. You can pop your questions into the Q&A panel. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to do so. So it doesn't look like we have any questions. If you think of anything after the webinar and if you want to get in touch with us, just please contact us at contact@openathens.net. Yeah, thanks, Sam. It's in the screen. Thank you very much all for coming and joining us today. And hope to see you again soon, and be on the lookout for the email that you'll be receiving with the recording very shortly. Thank you all so much.